Hello, Christy. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you today?
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, because Christy and I have been warming up. Everyone, this is Christy Holt. She is a mindset coach, author, podcast host, and happiness hussy. Which I love that word. I'm just like hussy, hussy, hussy. In a good way, in a good way. We've been just kind of babbling before pressing record, and I'm just so excited because I've been at a couple of things you've been presenting, and we've been in each other's worlds not very long. But I've already gotten so much inspiration and so much gold that I was like, I have to record you. I have to interview you. So welcome.
So grateful to be here.
I want to take everyone back. This is what I love doing. Like, take us back before the awesome Christy Holt that's sitting in front of us right now, right? That confident, self-loving, like badass podcasting author extraordinaire. Like, obviously there was a journey to get here. And we talked about some of your backgrounds where you're like, yeah, long story. Well, let's not go into the full-on story, but I'd love it if you could take it back a little through some of those pivotal moments that helped you get here for women who are like on their business journey right now.
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously so many pivotal moments in everyone's life where things shift and take a turn and you uncover something new about yourself, about the world, about the way things work, and it changes things forever, right? Like when you see something, then you can't unsee it. So often these things come to a new awareness, it changes everything. And so before I came to be in this sort of particular, I mean, we're constantly evolving. So who knows where we're going next, but along my way, some of the key things that really shifted things for me. Well, the biggest one actually was recognizing that I'm the one who's in control. And prior to that, I'll tell you what, I was like fucking knee deep in people pleasing and perfectionist tendencies and trying to be good enough, but also feeling like I was always too much, right? Too sensitive, too loud, too this, too that. And all of this like good girl conditioning to just, be quiet, obey, do what you're expected to do, be fucking nice all the time, right? And to give, and nurture, even if that was at the detriment of yourself. And so part of my story is I became a professional accountant, which would be very not obvious from the fact that I'm calling myself a happiness hussy right now. But it's all part of the journey. It gave me I have a business degree. It definitely gave me the background that I needed in order to start and sort of keep track of my business from that standpoint. So it wasn't for nothing, but it was pretty clear to me very early on that I was not really a fit for that environment. Although I did what I was supposed to do, I should all over myself. And I stayed in that career until I started having children, which, sometimes there's this pivotal point when you like end up stepping back. So when I had my first son, I had that opportunity to step back from the job and realize like, I don't want to do this, right? I couldn't see it when I was stuck in it because I was, first of all, so consumed by the doing the job, by the measuring up, by the trying to get promoted, by the trying to measure up. I think I said that twice. Obviously, it was really important. Just like the go. And I just was so busy that I didn't actually take the time to stop and think like, what else is there for me? And I've always loved to teach. And I really think that teaching is one of the best ways to learn yourself. And so, I have taught piano lessons actually since I was a teen. That was actually my first job and my first business as an entrepreneur, teaching piano. I still teach. I have a couple of amazing students that I still have today. Not literally today, but right now. I have taught accounting at post-secondary level institutions. And then I had my family. And when I realized, when I held my firstborn in my arms and realized like, I can't go back to that job. I can't leave him. Something shifted in me. And like, long story short, I ended up actually not going back to accounting. That's a story for another day. But I ended up not going back to that. I ended up staying home and having 3 sons actually over the number of years. And, that just shifted things. Then when my kids started getting a little bit older, I knew I still didn't want to go back to accounting. And so I started to ask myself, like, who am I? I really had gotten sucked into what I call just-a-mom-itis. And that is this idea, like, I'm I'm just so-and-so's mom. Like for years, I am certain that I'm in a lot of people's cell phone contacts as my kid's mom, basically, and not even having my name, not even having, this idea of who I was anymore. I was very lost. And I think this is a lot of that good girl conditioning, that overgiving, the constant nurturing, the constant martyring to put everyone else first. And so when I started to sort of create the space, I started to realize what I was doing, and I needed to make a shift. And so I actually went back. I became a personal trainer. I became a fitness coach, a nutrition coach. And I've always been pretty fascinated with mindset, neuroscience, quantum physics, all of these sort of components of how our mind works and how we experience our reality as a result of how our mind works. Yeah. And so that's always been sort of part and parcel with the coaching that I have done with a greater intention. And actually I was having a conversation earlier this morning, and I think I came up with a new phrase, which I feel like I'm winging it on purpose, which I know sounds contradictory. But it's all just to say, like, one step at a time, right? Having the big intention of moving forward towards big goals, but not having it all mapped out, because to be completely honest, the more you try and map it out, the faster you're going to realize that things do not go according to plan. And you have to be able to embrace that uncertainty and those sort of blips, those obstacles, those challenges, and give yourself the compassion, because they're opportunities of growth, right? And so I've had this sort of like long trajectory of all of these different stages in my life. But I'd say the pivotal moment actually was literally one day I realized, like, holy shit, like this is me. And at first I was like, oh shit, this is all me. Like, oh my God, like this is me. I'm doing this to myself. But in the same moment, recognizing, hold up a minute, like I'm the common denominator in all my problems, but that also means I am the common denominator in all of the solutions. So I am now in this position of realizing I'm in power, because I'm the one who can decide what is going to work for me and what's not going to work for me.
Again, I'm in control.
Yeah. And it was just really taking back my power. Now, like, here's the hard truth. We have never given away our power. It's not possible to give away your power, but you might think that you don't have power. You do. You've just got to kind of claim it, right? And so this was sort of my moment of like claiming that and being like, oh, okay, I am participating in all of these experiences, right? I was in a very difficult marriage for a number of years with my kid's dad, obviously. And it wasn't good for either of us. I mean, I would have told you a very different story 10 years ago, because I was in a very different place then. And I probably would have dropped a lot of, things like narcissism and gaslighting. And while some of those experiences still hold true, I just really look at the whole experience a lot differently now from this more zoomed out perspective. And I really feel like no one is intentionally hurtful or mean or any of these things. And they're not doing these behaviors out of malice. They're just literally operating from a trauma response, right? And so when you can give people that compassion, and oh my God, give yourself that compassion too, because we are all just doing, the best we can do with the knowledge and the resources and the understanding and experiences that we've had. Everyone's different. So we're all going to have a different outlook.
I like that reframe a lot, because it just allows you to have so much more compassion, right? And understanding. And instead of then falling into this tit for tat, right? Like that person, right? I explain this to my kids as well, like an eye for an eye and the whole world will go blind. So instead of retaliating or being mean back or getting mean, towards your ex or whatever person is, quote unquote, causing the pain in your life, one, you're taking power of it. And two, you're realizing, this person is probably really fucked up, right? Like, see, I censored myself. We did this earlier. Like the F, you said the fuck word. And I was like, you're so used to uncensoring yourself that you had to say the full version instead of the F word, because that would be censored. That cracked me up. I was like, oh, wow, you really programmed yourself well. It was funny. No, but it just allows the compassion and seeing the other person instead of someone who's mean and malice as someone who really actually just needs to get help and support in getting further down the path, right? And maybe that is winging it at the time, right? I like the winging it on purpose, but like, hey, maybe I'm gonna wing it and I'm just fucking nice to everyone in a way that's not at the detriment of myself, right? Because that's, again, that programming that I heard you talking about, like, oh, we can just bow down and say like, yes, please, please. But then we have no boundaries and we let ourselves be sucked dry, right? And it's that as well. Realizing that no one, I really like that no one, even if you think you've given your power away, no one has the ability to take that power away.
They can't take it. That's yours, and no one else can take it. The idea that you don't have power is really an illusion. And so you get to choose and take it back. And to me, this is shifting from, the victim mindset. Now, okay. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about victims of abuse here when I'm talking about victim mindset, but this idea that like, I'm not lucky, or bad things keep happening to me, or the world is at fault. Like this really puts us in a helpless victim role, which means we're not empowered to take action to make it better. So this taking, I call it like radical responsibility, allows us to shift from victor to victorious in our own story, right? And to rewrite the ending of the story to make it something that feels really good, because our intended state is to feel good, not feel shitty and overgiving and everything else. And yes, boundaries are actually a really huge part of that as well, because if you tolerate certain behaviors, you very well might find yourself in a similar situation to the one that I was in. And the story I kind of tell, the like metaphor I use is, very often you'll be driving home, and if your mind is somewhere else, you're not really paying attention to the road. I mean, you've driven it all the times before, so you just naturally go there. And sometimes, you can get home and realize like, oh shit, I hope I stopped at the stoplight, because I don't actually, mentally recall stopping. I was on autopilot. And this is like how I kind of this moment I came to realize, like, I have been putting up with some things that don't actually feel very good to me. I was lacking some boundaries. And that's on me. So radical responsibility, it has nothing to do with fault or blame or reasons or excuses or justice or any of that. All that does, all that complaining, blaming, excuses, and trying to, make it at someone else's fault, keeps you stuck in that victim mentality, which is not allowing you to step into the role of victorious, or like the victor over your life, right? So that's very disempowering. And we're here to shift that, to learn how to freaking love yourself enough to be empowered to go create the life that you truly want.
So I'm going to pick two things out of that, because I love the distinction that you do make between the victor and the victorious, because the victor also implies that there has to be someone who's losing, right? And when you are victorious, it has nothing to do with other people. Maybe that's like a small semantical thing, but the radical responsibility, that's something I deal with so much. I actually fired a client because she just couldn't get out of victim role no matter how much I was supporting. And I was like, yeah, at a certain point, like, I'm there to support as your coach, but if you're not willing to take, and not even radical responsibility, just responsibility for the fact that it's your life and you're making choices and things, like, then you're choosing to stay stuck.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think
but again, like, not the victims of actual like physical abuse or rape or things like that. Like, I like that you make that distinction too, because there are obviously some extremes, and this is a spectrum we're on, right?
Absolutely. And I think there's two pieces to like what I would call radical responsibility. Number one is awareness, right? We don't know what we don't know, but when we start to know, we can do better. And then the second part is a willingness to take action, right? And this isn't forced action or things that you don't, this is just doing what is actually naturally loving to you and fostering that connection within self. Because ultimately, our life experience is all built on that foundation of that relationship that we have with ourselves. And so if we don't love ourselves, if we got that nattering inner bitch, inner critic, negative self-talk loop, right? We're not in our power.
I'm at a cafe and they silently put down water next to me, noticing that I was in an interview. I love that. But
amazing.
Yeah. So the two parts of it, right? Like the first, the awareness, and then willingness to take shit. And that's key, because you need awareness. Without awareness, you can continue like stumbling. I like the metaphor, like you're just stumbling blindly down your tunnel, right? Like you have no idea where you're going. And then it's like, you see that little picture. That's where I'm going. But you still, then the willingness to take action is to keep putting that foot in front of you, even knowing that you've got to travel down this dark tunnel, not exactly knowing how you're going to get there or what's in between, right? I just came up with this, right? This tunnel metaphor, but exactly that you have to be willing to take a step, even if it's scary, even if you don't know what's coming, right? That into the unknown thing. I love that as a second step, because there are so many people who are like, I'm aware, but I'm not going to do anything about it right now. I'm going to kind of hang out. Things are okay. They're not horrible.
Right? It could be worse.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's uncomfortable. And ultimately this whole idea that I think that a lot of people, so when I was in this situation, when I would say I was really stuck and I wasn't aware, and I was becoming more aware, starting with this realization, like, holy shit, this is me. I am the problem and the solution. Hooray. But how do I get myself unstuck? How do I find the motivation? Because, and motivation is a whole other topic, but we don't have time to dive into that. But I discovered that the first step was shutting down all of the spirals that were going on in my mind, right? Because it's so easy for our mind to start with the stories, to start with the blame, to start with the excuses, to start with the, oh, that's too hard, you're never going to do that. And all the trash talk. And so I decided, like, if I could just shut that down and create some space, then I could intentionally choose what actions I was going to take. I could choose which thoughts that I wanted to accept and on board as, who am I? Because
I love this. This is exactly, because I recognize these topics. I'm like, this is a perfect segue into your book, right? Because it's exactly what you talk about in your book, right? The being stuck and the spirals.
So in my book, I talk about the spiral stopper method, which is ultimately my way of like getting out of like that overwhelm, the overthinking, the anxious thinking, and even like those like thought feelings. You know, you might have an emotion and that's great, and that's meant to be felt. But what's not meant is the spiral of all that trash talk that often comes along with that emotion, because we want to give that emotion some meaning, right? And that asshole part of our mind, as I very lovingly refer to it in my book, is there to keep you safe. Okay. So it pops in, it's like, okay, we're going to keep you safe. And what safe is familiar.
Yep.
Right? So let's bring you back into your comfort zone of familiar.
Comfort zone. That was exactly what came up.
Right? We don't want to change too much because that's scary. It's not familiar. We like to stay in the known zone, right? And so this is really what I'm talking about, like winging it on purpose is like moving beyond, expanding out of the comfort zone. We don't know what to expect always, right? We are venturing into uncertainty, which asshole mind be like, whoa, hold up. We might die. This is very scary. Let's just rein it in. But the truth is all opportunity and possibility exists outside of your comfort zone. And so if you want something different, you have to be willing to get a little bit uncomfortable. Now, safety first, okay? Regulating your nervous system is a really important step in this, because you might be able to step forward. But if you're someone who steps forward and is like, oh shit, let's go back. And then you try and you're like, nope, failing. I don't know why I can't do this. Like I just keep ending back in the same loop. Well, it's because your nervous system isn't on board. So safety first. But this ties into my book, Unstuck, which is ultimately about breaking out of those thought loops, those emotional spirals, the overthinking, the constant stress, fear, worry, all of these things. So you can be intentional with your actions, right? So that you can go after the life you truly want. Yeah,
absolutely. I love the safety on first, because I think that's also one of the things where people may get into that negative cycle of, right, what is it called? The the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? When you're like afraid of failing because you failed before, and then every time these people who have really a nervous system failure, they're stepping forward and they're like, I can't, and it just confirms, oh, see, I knew you couldn't do that. Maybe it's better we just don't even bother trying. Right. So then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that, right, if I remember correctly, you have the positive side, right? The other way, like how to come out the other side. But you got to take care of other parts. Right? It's not only those thoughts, but it's like literally your physical, your nervous system has to get on board.
Yeah. And even if you can actually somehow, forget, quote unquote, forget maybe those past traumas or experiences that you don't want to take forward, even if you can manage to like mentally forget them, your body is keeping track of that. So sometimes you're going to find that, response coming up and you're like, I don't even know where it's coming from. I thought I worked through this, and it just keeps coming up until you do the work to process that. And that means not bypassing, not toxic positivity, pretend it doesn't exist, sweep it under the rug, but feeling through it and observing the lessons that are within those emotions for you to experience, but without all those stories, because those are going to take you off in another land, and they're actually not going to allow you to feel the emotion. They're just going to trap you in your thoughts.
that was going to be my next question, right? Like, how would one go about, right? If you, and I'm just thinking from the perspective of maybe whoever's watching this is like, oh my God, that is me. And they're recognizing like, but how the hell do I change this? Right? Like you start getting into it, right? Like feeling through it, observing the feelings, like what other tips do you get for people who like notice that they're kind of stuck in that nervous system area?
Yeah, I mean, there are a ton of amazing modalities that you can work with to move the energy in your body. And inside my book, the spiral stopper ultimately is a toolbox
Yeah.
of resources that you can use. Like it's building your own personalized toolbox, which I walk you through. And there are a ton of different tools you can add to your toolbox because everyone's different, right?
Yep.
And so different things work for different people at different times. So to me, it's imperative to have a whole toolbox of resources because what's going to work when you're at home by yourself is not going to be the same thing that's going to work while you're driving your kids to school or in line at the grocery store. So you need a toolbox of things so that you can pull upon it quickly and easily when those situations arise. Ultimately, when you have those sort of like trigger moments, and it could be triggered by something external or oh my God, you know, one thought in your own mind can trigger some shit sometimes too, right?
Yeah.
But learning how to identify that and moving through that survival reaction space that your RAS, your reticular activating system is like, holy shit, we're going to die, like panic mode, like survival response, like there's a lion chasing me, we might die kind of response, which makes no sense to most typical situations that we're actually having this, you know, bodily response to. Sometimes it's like our partner looked at us the wrong way and we're like, right. And so you'll recognize those patterns. You're like, where the fuck did that come from? I don't know. But building a toolbox so that you can retrain your brain, rewire those circuits so that you're able to respond versus react, right?
Yep.
Moving into that power of intentional conscious creation versus autopilot survival mode thinking. And so ultimately, you know, the spiral stopper is intended to be a tool to use to move through that survival reaction time, which is, you know, 60 to 90 seconds, depending on the person, until our nervous system can come back into balance. And then we can use our brain with clarity, right? Instead of, you know, in that first 60 to 90 seconds, you are not thinking clearly. You are thinking like kill, 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 or whatever, right?
Or flee, right? Like, was it fight, flight, or fright?
Yeah. Fight, flight,
or freeze.
Or fawn, right? Because sometimes people are just like so scared of conflict. This is probably me. I'm definitely like, I don't like conflict. I don't like it. It does not feel good.
Try and make it all nice.
Try and just fix it, right? People pleasing, codependency, all that. So we want to be able to move through that so that we can actually choose, right? Like, to me, this is like creating the space for actually operating in a free will kind of situation that people talk about. When you're autopilot reacting, you're not consciously choosing, you are not responding, you're just reacting. Right. And so you're not able to choose in that situation. You just physically don't have the capacity to make an informed decision because you're operating solely on emotions and past experience that you're bringing forward into this moment. And so we don't need to keep that past experience as far as like, you know, bringing that into the future. We want to let go of any like past suffering and pain associated with it. You know, once is generally enough to suffer the consequences of something, but so many of us love to drag that shit with us. I don't know why. The permission slip is yours. For the love, please set it down. Be free.
What do you think that's the definition of stupidity? This just came up in parenting recently. when my oldest son was saying he was bored. We're like, well, the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. But some of us are kind of like gluttons for punishment, if you would have. And we're like, no, I'm a repetitive learner. Let me just repeat the same mistake over and over again and just feel the pain and the suffering. And I feel like some people I don't know, maybe it's part of our learning, and that's a good reflection as well. Like maybe it's part of our learning that we have to have the same lesson so many times before it's painful enough to say, hey, I need to snap out of it right now, because I'm sure you know this as well, right? We're far more motivated by avoiding pain than going towards a gain. Unfortunately, people have to often hit like a low point or something that's like so terrible in their life before they're willing to do that, right? The willingness to take action that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. It is usually like exactly like you said, right? Like moving out of a rock bottom, and that looks different for everybody, but a perceived rock bottom where, and really, I'm going to define this rock bottom. It's just a place where the comfort of staying still is no longer outweighing the the discomfort, right?
Nope.
So you're feeling this like need to do something differently. Maybe you still don't know what the hell that looks like.
Nope.
Spiral stopper might be a great place to start. Just saying.
Just
Honestly, it's about, that relationship with self, and building a healthy relationship with self is actually how you are going to not only, change yourself, but you're going to impact your relationships. You're going to impact your experience of reality. And quite frankly, the way to change the world is from the inside out. So if you want to make the world a better place and have the life, relationships, and business impact legacy that you want, it starts within. So building that self-love, that self-nurturing, building up your ability to connect with your intuition, self-trust, right, is going to empower you to take the action. And I wanted to say earlier too, there's this with respect to the self-fulfilling prophecy. First of all, I think that comes from confirmation bias, right? Like our reticular activating system has this filter built in where we can't frankly keep up with the amount of information that's being processed. So our filter just is like, okay, this fits. And it's kind of done on a confirmation bias because it's like, oh, she would want to know this, right? There's literally like, I don't know what the number is. It's
but I
10
get
billion bits, and our brain can only take in so much.
Yeah. And so we look for the things that confirm what we already know. So if we're already thinking, for example, that we're a selfish person, and we get that, then we'll only, out of all the compliments and everything great that we're hearing, we're only going to pick up the one that's like ties into like how selfish we are, right? So that like the filter that we applied, right? That confirmation bias. Really good.
And so like personally, I would rather apply the filter of like being a lucky bitch. Like this is something that people talk about more recently, this lucky bitch idea, and where you're just believing that things work out for me. And if you believe that puts your filter onto a different level, right? It's onto a filter that's looking for evidence that things are working out for me. And I'll tell you what, that is, you're going to get results when you start looking for things that are working out for you. When you start looking for good things, positive things, action steps that feel good for you, you're going to start to see a lot more possibility and opportunity. And then it's just up to you whether you're going to take action.
Well, I love that because Lucky Bitch, that's Denise Duffield Thomas's book, right? Like,
Get Rich Lucky Bitch.
Yeah, I love that book. I love all of her stuff. But it also started making me more aware that at every tiny level, you can apply that thinking, right? So it doesn't have to be that, oh, I'm going to become a millionaire, right? I'm such a lucky bitch, I'm a millionaire. But like, I literally implement this because it was such a fun example. I was just like, why do I always find the perfect parking space? I just know I'm going to find the perfect parking space. And it happens here. Like I'm in Tamarino, Costa Rica, which is like, it's middle of high season. It's packed. It's busy. And yet I'm always finding parking places, right? It's like one of those funny examples, like, I'm so lucky. I always find good parking places, right? But exactly that when we're focusing on like, I'm going to be lucky. It's all going to work out. It just like, and I'm sure like just puts your brain on that frequency of and drawing that towards you.
That, and also I think, how do I want to phrase this? I think, ultimately we're the creator. We're the creator of our own experience. And I know that if you are stuck right now, you might be thinking I'm full of shit. And I get that because when I was back there and I would see people saying like, and I still sometimes think like on things where I haven't achieved and they're like, it's so easy. It gets to be easy. I'm thinking you're full of shit. It's not easy. It's not easy from standing over here. But oftentimes the truth is when you look back, you have a different perspective. So I think that's where this comes from, right? This whole idea, like it can be easy because I've already come to this place where it is easier. So from here, it looks easier. And the truth is we catastrophize stuff in our mind all the time and we make it seem so much more scary, so much bigger, so much more overwhelming. Again, we have this tendency as humans to want to have it all fucking mapped out before we take the first step. We want to be ready. We want to have enough, certifications or knowledge or whatever to do the thing. But the truth is we're going to get there by doing one baby step at a time. Like, again, winging it on purpose, moving towards your destination, but enjoying the journey. And if you want to find those instances, that evidence that you are in fact a lucky bitch, you're going to look back and you're going to look at those things that seemed like they were really shitty, really horrible, complete life drain, suffering, pain, and see what happened as a result. Because in my experience, and it's not something that's easy to do while you're in it. So I don't
Nope.
recommend try and be looking for this while you're in it. Like, it's okay to go through difficult times. Like, it's part of life. We're not here to skip it over and have everything go perfectly all the time. We're here to learn how to maneuver the uncertainty, to maneuver life's challenges, and really use that to propel us forward. But if you look back, like if I look back to my very difficult divorce, like it was literally one of the darkest times. Trigger warning, I had like there was times in that space going through this very high conflict divorce where I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how I could keep going. I thought about, where's somewhere I could drive my vehicle off the road and just end it all, because it was so fucking painful to sit and face. And I wanted so desperately for it to work out, right? When we're in that situation, oh my gosh, we just want it to be okay. We want it to be, to hold the family together, for our kids to be okay, for everything to work out. And sometimes that doesn't happen. But you know what? I wouldn't be right here right now if I hadn't gone through that. And so if I had an opportunity to do it all again, I would 1,000% go back and do all of it again, because it brought me to becoming who I am today. And today I am confident. I am fucking following my dreams. I am creating the life that I want on purpose, after going through this very difficult divorce and navigating co-parenting, which is, honestly, it's a bit of an ongoing adventure. But
well, you did say we're constantly evolving.
We are constantly evolving. And I think, if I look at how I've grown through that process, at the beginning of our split, like if he called me, I would literally like be damn near in the throes of a panic attack. I like the anxiety would rise up in my body. I would be shaking, and it would last for a long time after we talked. And like, it could literally, conversations can be about nothing. Like, and I'm just like, just the mere interaction would send my nervous system into panic mode.
Yeah.
And it was never physically unsafe with him. So I want to even say, like, this can happen even when there's no physical safety. Like, emotional and verbal abuse, manipulation, all these things are abuse too. Okay.
Yeah.
So moving past that, like, if I look now, we can have a conversation, and I don't have that physical response. I can't comment on his end of what kind of response he's having. We are both on our own journeys, but I can say I no longer have that anxious response. I can have a conversation, remain calm. Sometimes, hell, I can laugh about it, because sometimes the absurdity of it is just comical. Like, I am just like, I don't know what to do with that information sometimes. And that's actually the same case. I had a good friend of mine ask me just the other day, like, do we ever get to that point where that inner critic, that asshole mind actually stops? I'm like, no, not really. But you get to sort of like get used to it and observe it from a detached position. And it can't, I'm like, shit, sometimes this is pretty funny. I'm like, wow, my mind is.
You know what that makes me think of? Like, if you've ever like watched all the Harry Potter movies, and they had that the boggart, right? That creates like all your worst fears. And the way to slay it is to laugh at it, or to imagine it as a ridiculous thing. Like, you can imagine this is kind of like a little, like a funny old lady voice or something. You can be like, ha ha ha, you again. You're like, they're not gone, but you can kind of point a finger and like, you're funny, right? Like, and not taking that seriously.
Right. And I think actually the more we resist something, the more it persists. So the more we try and resist those thoughts that are flowing through, the more we try and like, oh, no, and argue with it and all of that kind of stuff, but actually keep them flowing. So instead of that, just like being like, oh, isn't that interesting? Like, it's fascinating. The thoughts that still come through my mind. I'm like, yeah, that's ridiculous. I'm not even going to touch that one. That's hilarious. Like, what's going on here? I'm just going to hard pass on that, because been there, done that, got the t-shirt, not doing that anymore.
Right. Well, it's more the ability, then you've trained yourself in the ability to detach from giving meaning to that, what the inner voice is saying, or like assigning like, oh, that means something about me. And I think what you're touching on is also one of the main principles, right, of meditation, right? The ability to just, no judgment, just observe I'm terrible at meditating in general. This is active meditation. So that's an area for development, right? Because if I say I'm terrible, I'm never good, right? That's just going to persist. But it's an area for development that, like, when I just let my thoughts be, eventually everything just filters out. And it's okay for all of it to be. Like, we don't have to be a certain way. And I think this is kind of going full circle around to what you said in the beginning, was like trying so hard to force ourselves into what we think is society's predefined terms of what a nice girl is, or what success is, right? If you're talking about business, or what a good mom looks like, or what a good partner does, and throwing that kind of all out the fucking window.
Yeah.
Right.
Throw it
and
all out because,
and focusing on us and what we want and what lights our fire and our energy. Because again, that's been really tuning into myself and my own self-love, and taking that as like the main standpoint on which to live your life. Not to say fuck you to everyone, right?
No.
And it's not to be like an uncaring, mean bitch to everyone. It's just that, like, hey, that realization. This is, I love that you're a personal trainer, right? And a health coach, because I did the hormone balance coaching, and I did that right after breaking my foot, because it brought this realization: if I don't take care of myself, I physically, literally could not put my feet on the ground. I cannot take care of my family, right? Yeah. And that's the same thing. If you do not love yourself and take care of yourself, how can you do it for other people? Especially if you're someone who's like in business, wants to create positive impacts in other people's lives, or if you're a parent and you want to like provide this awesome example for your family. But if you're sacrificing yourself, throwing yourself under a bus, being that martyr, like what kind of an example are we giving?
Nope. And you know, I know the airplane oxygen mask thing is way overdone, but the truth is we do need to go first, right? Because let's be honest, these kids are not fucking listening. They're not listening. They're not listening, but they are watching. They are observing us. And the only way to, okay, here's the thing that I really realized. First of all, you can't change anyone else. You can't control them. You can't change them. They have got to make that decision for themselves. And that includes your kids, despite all your best intentions to raise them up. You know, they don't fall short and they fit all these things, and that they have a really good, safe life, right? Bullshit. The way to do that is actually by going first, and by living your life and loving yourself so that they can see this example, right? And when you do that, you also open yourself up to healthier, stronger, more connected relationships. I tell you what, very shortly after this hell year where I literally was thinking about driving my van off a pointy cliff somewhere, I was not looking for a relationship, and found, you know, my most amazing partner that I've been together with for almost 5 years. Like we haven't had a fight yet in 5 years. We went into it very clear on boundaries, on each of our own boundaries. We both had a very secure relationship with ourselves, knew what we wanted, weren't afraid to fucking ask for it. And, you know, laid out those boundaries very clearly. And at the same time, released all expectation, because hey, we're only human. We're all doing the best we can. Here's how you can love me best. But it's not an expectation. It's just an offering of what's possible. Because I really think relationships are about the giving. And I don't mean this to the detriment of yourself. My God, please have boundaries and not over giving. But it is about the giving, because we actually receive love when we give love. It seems paradoxical. And so the truth is, if you love yourself, you have the experience of receiving that love. You can create that love. You can create that safety. You can create that experience of success and happiness and abundance and all those things right here, right now in yourself. That is your superpower. This is our human superpower that people just don't know about, because we go around, we're disconnected. We've had big emotions and we've been shut down. So we disconnect. We don't want to face it. We separate mind and body. And a lot of us don't even recognize the soul component in there. We just a walking meat suit, doing what's, you know, expected of us. We're shitting all over the place, following all of society's, you know, conditioned guidelines of what we're supposed to be. I say, fuck that, because you know what? It hasn't been working. And there is a way to do it where you can be free. You can be the one who's deciding, and you're not here to suffer. You're not here to struggle and have pain every step of the way. You're here to create.
I think it's then, instead of putting on instead of being a walking meat suit, to be like, put on the superhero suit, but like that superhero for yourself first and foremost. Yeah.
You know, I like to say there's no savior out there. No one out there is coming to save you. And at the same time, the more time we spend chasing the next thing to make us feel better, the next thing that we think is going to be the result, the next whatever that's going to make us feel happy or successful or abundant or whatever, it's all a distraction, because it's not out there. everything that you're seeking is within, and you can become the hero of your own story by choosing to do so, and by saving yourself, building this relationship that you have with yourself.
I think that's it. I want to tie this into them, like the title, right, of this series, right? The real badass moms in business.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not a logical first step, but just given the whole of our conversation, I'm like, the definition of being a real mom, a real badass mom in business, anyway, the inspiration you're bringing into it for me is that being a badass means you have to love yourself first.
Yeah.
And be willing to go against the stream and do things differently. And that's what I'd like to just take, and I know we could babble on forever, but I'd love to, like, from the perspective of where you are right now, right? Because you've been in business for quite a few years now. You've done all this development. You've been through some crazy shit. You become a published author. You have your own podcast. Like, what golden tip would you give to, like, someone who's a few years behind, like, in their business journey or in their personal development journey, to help really, like, springboard them forward?
I mean, ultimately, the best business advice I could give anybody is to find your way. And actually, this is just life advice. Finding your aligned actions, like your path, your truth, your own particular truth that's only unique to you, is your path, right? And so learning to get rid of the spirals so that you can think clearly, so that you can consciously choose what it is that you want to create in your experience. And then really building a solid relationship with yourself first, so that you know what your gifts are, what your perceived weaknesses are. Because sometimes those weaknesses are actually not weaknesses at all. They're actually superpowers in disguise. So conversation for another day. But really finding your particular path is the way to go. Because listen, I spent a lot of time trying to follow a lot of other people's paths, and they did not work. Big fat dead end, big roadblocks, big challenges, a lot of disappointment. And the truth is, I needed to find my own path. And that can be really hard to do. We do have this tendency to cock block ourselves. It often comes down to this safety mechanism kind of kicking in and keeping us safe and protected in our familiar comfort zone. And because of this confirmation bias and this safety requirement, we sometimes don't even see our own bullshit. We literally feel justified in doing the things because, like, this is a line for me, but we don't often see. So sometimes a good mentor, someone who's going to call you out on your stuff that you just, like, have those blinders on about, can really help you get there a little bit faster. Right. And if you want to work on building that relationship with self, definitely check out my podcast. It's called Create Your Happy. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts. And the whole second season is all about building a relationship with self. Having this solid foundation literally reflects out into every other relationship that you have, and your business and you have a relationship too. So you want to connect that and build a healthy relationship with yourself, so that can be reflected in your relationship with your business too.
Oh my goodness. I love it. I would so, because I've listened to some of the podcast episodes. That's like one of the first things I did after I jumped on one of your networking events, actually, is go and listen to these podcasts, and they're like fascinating stuff. And it's just a different angle, but we have a similar vibe. So if you guys like this talk that we're having, like similar stuff, so go check out Christy's book, Unstuck, and her podcast. What's that? I think Happiness Hussy. I keep thinking Happiness Hussy. Create Your Happy. Create Your Happy. I'm gonna put all the links down underneath the video. And Christy, I think this is, like, it's just a perfect moment, because I know. I think you've said 4 times during the course of this interview, like, oh, topic for another. I'm gonna go back and watch it and be like, all right, we're gonna pick up. It's like we're gonna do a series together. But thank you so much for your time. It has been so much fun just battling back and forth and swearing a lot. Like to give myself permission. The usual.
If you ultimately my vision is to help people to become unfuckwithable, right? So they could go out, create the life, the relationship, the business, the impact, leave the legacy. I know you're being called to do something bigger than you might be doing right now. If that's you, I love new friends. So please feel free to reach out and connect on Facebook or wherever. We'll have the links. So I'd love to chat.
Thank you so much, Christy. All right. Talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.